All right, we have 10.6, solving rational equations. And I'm going to jump right in on this one. When you're looking at this problem, it kind of goes back to when we looked at proportions. So when we look at proportions, we sometimes see this. And when we have the equal sign, we've learned that we can say, oh, if I multiply this times this, and this times this, I can do it. So if I multiply 1 times 4 minus x, I get 4 minus x. And if I multiply 1 times x, I get x. And now the fractions have now gone away. I can only do that because I had one fraction on the left and one fraction on the right. So that was the only reason I could do that. We can also look at it this way. That works for no matter what. If we multiply everything by the common denominator, which again would not be really easy, 4 minus x, I would have to multiply by x and 4 minus x. So I would be multiplying this side by x and 4 minus x, and multiplying this side by x and 4 minus x. And here you would see these two would cancel each other out, because 4 minus x divided by 4 minus x would be 1. And here, x divided by x would be 1. And we would end up with 4 minus x times 1 and 1 times x, which is exactly what we just did. This will work no matter how the problem's set up. This will only work if it's a fraction equals a fraction. So hopefully it helps some of you. And then let's just look at this. We want to get the variables on the same side. Here we get a 0. We're left with 4 equals x plus x. There's two x's there. Divide by 2. X equals 2. All right. All right, so now we're looking at not just one fraction on the left and one fraction on the right. We're looking at 3 fractions. And again, we're not real comfortable with those fractions. So when we're looking at this, we're going to say, okay, we have to find that common denominator. Now, most of the time when a teacher does that, they say, oh, the common denominator is 24, and we need to do 6 times 4. I try to get you guys to see that we need to get rid of fractions, and then maybe our answer might be a fraction, but it'll be easier to handle the problem. So if I say the common denominator is 24, I have to multiply every term in the problem by 24. And remember that that's the same thing as 24 over 1. And our equal sign's right here. We don't want to lose that. And when we look here, we have a 24 on the top and a 4 on the bottom. 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 24 divided by 4 is 6. So I'm left with 6 times 3 on this one is 18 over 1 times 1, which is 1. One fraction gone. Here, 24 and 8. So remember, it's the same as 24 over 1. I could do 24 divided by 8. So 8 divided by 8 gives me 1. 24 divided by 8 gives me 3. And I have 5 times 3 is 15. Second fraction's done. Here we have 24 on the top, 12 on the bottom. 12 divided by 12 is 1. 24 divided by 12 is 2. So I have 2 times 2x is 4x. And now there's no fractions to deal with, and we have the same problem because we multiplied everything by the common denominator. So we can do the simple stuff here on this side. 18 plus 15, which is 33. Then get the 4x, and we need to get the x by itself. This is 4 times x, so the opposite is division. And x equals, and we're going to end up with a fraction at the end as the answer, but adding and subtracting and dividing, all that stuff is much easier when we don't have to deal with that fraction. So again, we have another problem, and we can do it either way of the two ways we showed you. It happens to be that it's one fraction on one side and one fraction on the other. So I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. If you want to do common denominators, you can. 6 minus x times 1 equals 6 minus x. X times 1 equals x. Fractions are gone. Add that x to both sides. X and a negative x gives me a 0. I'm left with 6. Bringing down my fraction, or my equal sign. X plus x is 2x. Divide by 2. Undo this side. So we get x equals 3. Now we're looking again, we have one fraction on the left and one fraction on the right. But if you look carefully at the two fractions, they have a common denominator. They have the exact same denominator. So I can cross it like I did on the last problem and on the very first problem I did, but I also can multiply this side times x minus 1 and this side times x minus 1. And here, remember again, we would write it over 1. And you can see there's an x minus 1 on the top and on the bottom. So x minus 1, excuse me, x minus 1 divided by x minus 1 is a 1. And we're left with 1 divided by 1, which is 1. Over here, x minus 1 and x minus 1, we're left with x squared. And we have two possible answers for x. X can be 1 because 1 times 1 equals 1. And x could be negative 1 because negative 1 times negative 1 would also equal 1. So we end up with two possible answers. All right, so now we only have one fraction. And when we're looking at that, remember the best thing to do, and it might be the best way for you to attack any problem that you have that has an equal sign with a fraction, is multiply every term by the common denominator. So the common denominator, there's only one fraction, and that means that the common denominator is x. So I'm going to multiply this side by x, I'm going to multiply this by x, and I'm going to multiply this by x. Here I have an x on top and x on the bottom. X divided by x is 1. So in this case I get a 1 divided by 1, which is 1. X times x, x squared, and 2x. Now we're going to move that 2x over, and we get 0 on this side, x squared minus 2x plus 1, and we should recognize that. We're going to look for the roots now because that's how we're going to solve it, and we're going to end up with something times something equals 0. And if you do FOIL, then you can go ahead and do your FOIL. I'm going to do the box. I need to factor it in order to find the what does x equal. So x squared goes here, positive 1 goes here. I notice it's a negative 2, so I'm going to do a negative 1 times negative 1, gives me a positive 1. X times x. This one they share. This one they share. Here this shares with this. And negative 1, negative 1, negative 1. So I end up with, in this one, negative x, and in this one, negative x. And a negative x and a negative x makes a negative 2, so I know I'm in the right place. So I have x minus 1, and they both equal 0. Well, they're exactly the same, so I just need to do it one time. X minus 1 equals 0. Add the 1 to both sides, x equals 1. And remember, the reason we do that is in order to get this as a 0 over here, that means one of these two has to equal 0. Because 0 times something is going to give me a 0. And since they're exactly the same, we just say, okay, x minus 1 equals 0. And we find out what's it going to be in order for it to be a 0. Again, we have more than just one fraction on each side. We've got two fractions on one side and a regular number on the other side. And we're going to get rid of the fractions. We're going to do that by multiplying by the common denominator. Well, this one has 2x and this one has x. So when you're looking at that, I need at least a 2 on the bottom and at least one x. So let's see if 2x works. So I'll put the 2x here and a 2x here and a 2x here. Every term has to be multiplied. Remember, terms are separated by a plus or a minus. So in the case here, 2x on top and 2x on the bottom, 2x divided by 2x is 1, and we end up with a bunch of 1 on this side. Over here, there's an x on the bottom and an x on the top. X divided by x is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. That makes a much nicer problem there. And then here, 2 times 12 is 24, x. Again, 3 equals 24x, but we were able to take something that was a really difficult looking problem and make it down to barely nothing at the end and just a quick step. So divide this side by 24 and that side by 24. Now we have to simplify anytime a fraction can be simplified. And I can divide both of these numbers by what? I know I can divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 24 divided by 3 is 8. And I now have my answer for x. X is 1/8. Now this problem looks rather involved, and it is. It's not going to be difficult. It's just going to take a lot of steps. And we're going to do again, we're going to look for the common denominator to get rid of those fractions. And look here though, x plus 4, x minus 4, and x squared minus 16. I can't do much right here, but I know I can factor x squared minus 16. So I'm going to do a box, and if you do reverse FOIL, no problem. X squared goes here, negative 16 goes here. I know the middle is going to be a 0, so I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together and give me 16, but when you add them, you get a 0. And I think I'm looking for 4 and negative 4. So if these two, and this one's going to be x and x, if these two share negative 4, these two share x, these two share the x, and these two share the 4, I'm looking here, I get a 4x, here I get a negative 4x, add them together, I get 0. So I'm going to rewrite this, x over x plus 4 minus 4 over x plus, or excuse me, x minus 4 equals x squared plus 16 over x plus 4 and x minus 4. Now I cannot factor x squared plus 16. It's got two squares. It's, when you think about difference of two squares, it's got two squares, but it's an addition. It's not a difference. So now it's going to be a little easier to multiply. My common denominator is going to be x plus 4 times x plus, or excuse me, x plus 4 times x minus 4. So now I'm looking good. So if I multiply this side times x plus 4, x minus 4, and this term by x plus 4, x minus 4, and this term times x plus 4, x minus 4. Well, here, remember this is on a 1, and I'm kind of stuck in there, but you have an x minus 4 and an x minus 4. There's a 1. X plus 4, x plus 4, there's a 1. And you're left with x squared plus 16 on the right hand side. This is all over 1. It's two terms multiplied together. X minus 4 on the top, x minus 4 on the bottom. So I get negative 4 minus 4 times x plus 4. And that's all I have in that term. Here, top, we have x plus 4, x plus 4. And we're left with x times x minus 4. Much easier problem than this one up here. Much easier problem than this one up here. So let's go ahead and do some eliminating of the parentheses by distributing. So x times x, x times x, minus 4 times x, minus 4 times x, minus 4 times 4 equals x squared plus 16. This would be x squared minus 4x minus 4x minus 16 equals x squared plus 16. X squared, it looks like I add these two together, they're both negative. Negative 8 minus 16 equals x squared plus 16. Now we need to remember to keep our equal sign going in the same place, so we need to get the x's together on the same side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract this x squared from both sides. You notice I did on both sides of the equal sign. Over here it becomes a 0, x squared minus x squared, and I'm left with 16. But look at this, x squared minus x squared gives me a 0 also. I'm left with a minus 8x. That negative doesn't go away. Minus 16. Much nicer problem. Let's go ahead and get the x by itself. So we're undoing the problem. This is a minus 16, so we want a plus 16. A negative 16 and a positive 16 is 0. And negative 8x comes down. Here I get 32. Divide by a negative 8. And we get x equals 32 divided by 8 is 4. Negative and a positive makes a negative.